We might as well go ahead and get started. Although it's very pleasant to talk about all these things for the hour. That would be great. But I'm sure, Congressman, you have hopefully some good updates on your end.
Yeah, well, I do. This week's crucial. We're going to pass, I think, a $1.9 trillion. I don't like to use the word. Yeah, I guess relief. Relief is the good word. It's not a stimulus. It's really about doing the things that we know need to be done with COVID. And one is obviously money for the vaccines and the virus, and for the healthcare needs for the state to effectively and as quickly as possible administer the vaccine. That's key. The second is money, to help us get our schools open safely and keep them open, which is an incredible challenge locally. But you do need resources in order to do that, just because of the personnel demands that are associated with it and because of the social distancing requirements. Third, another round of checks to people that would go out very, very promptly. Fourth, another continuation of supplemental unemployment benefits. And, we've got millions of people who continue to be out of work and don't know when they're going to go back. And the only way they're keeping body and soul together is with this supplemental unemployment benefit. And next is, of course, some continuation in aid to small business. And what I'm seeing, but you guys are on the ground, so I'll be very interested to hear about this. It's really our smaller businesses, like our restaurants, like our performance venues, like our nonprofits, like Latches Theater, let's say, that are just hanging on and will be the last to reopen because they can't open those doors until people, in fact, are safe and feel safe. So we've got to maintain our support for them. And I just want to digress for a minute. And the reason I say that is that obviously we've got to help individuals pay their bills. We've got to help small businesses, but we also have to help communities. The vitality of our downtowns already under challenge depends on those restaurants. It depends on those nonprofits. And when we get to that other side of COVID, and that's coming, we want to make sure those local institutions, those local businesses are with us when we are all vaccinated. And then finally, and I think this is really of interest to all of you, the COVID package it would result in $960 million coming to Vermont. And 2/3 of that would go to the state, and 1/3 of it would go to our municipalities. And there'd be a good deal of flexibility with that. And I know that many of our local organizations work with the state when they have flexibility about the distribution of the original funds. But that obviously is going to be a tool where, with significant local flexibility, Vermonters, as opposed to those of us in Washington, are going to be able to make wise decisions about how best to allocate that money for the greatest good and for the greatest and quickest recovery. The status of that legislation right now is we anticipate voting on it in the House. It starts in the House. And it's very tight. As you know, there's a 5-vote margin on the Democratic side, and we're in support of this. My hope is that we'll get some of our Republican colleagues to join us, but it's going to be a very tight, intense vote that I expect we're going to have on Friday or Saturday. It then goes to the Senate. And of course, Senator Leahy is critical, always has been, but in his position as chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee, he probably has more influence on this than just about anybody in Congress. And one of the things that he's always championed for us that's been really beneficial is the small state minimum, so that whatever funds are allocated, Vermont tends to do pretty well relative to our population. And it's very tight in the Senate. It's, as you know, 50-50. And it appears right now that the Republicans oppose this package. So whether the question is being able to stick together in order to get that passed in the Senate. I think the package we have has broad support. I mean, obviously, there are aspects of it we could we could re-examine, you know, the way it's going to be done or how it's done. But the bottom line here is that the elements of this, the state and local aid, the individual relief, the money to help us open our schools, these things are really, really essential and broadly supported and much needed. And the view that Biden has taken, President Biden has taken, and it's one I share, is that we've got to do something significant now. And it's better to err on going fast rather than slow. It's better to err on doing a little bit more than you need rather than too little. And most economists agree with that. There's also in there the minimum wage increase, which I expect will be part of the House bill. And then it's got very, very significant challenges in the Senate. Bernie, of course, is championing that in the Senate Budget Committee, but there'll be parliamentary rules that only the Senate can resolve. And I don't know if at a certain point Chris wants to weigh in with any comments, because he's at the seat of the action working with Senator Leahy. But I think this is extremely important for Vermont's recovery. And I think the wisdom with which Vermont approaches this and how it allocates the money is going to make a huge difference in how quickly not only individuals recover, but our local communities recover. And this is where I think the work you have been doing for the past year is really it's really, really important, you know, to be staying on this on a regular basis like you are, and sharing information and providing information about what the real world challenges are for your communities, and doing the back and forth in getting that information to Patrick, to me, to Bernie, getting it really importantly, obviously, to the legislature and to the governor's office. So that's where we're at right now. But this next week in the House is critical. The following week in the Senate is going to be critical. And I'll stop there, but I do want to thank you. It's been a year. I mean, I think about this. I think I was on your second call. And just think about what this state has been through, what your communities have been through. You know, in March, I was coming back from Washington. It was just such a different world. And usually I'm getting on a crowded flight. And I was driving out. It was in the evening. I was taking the 10:30 at night plane. And I got a call from American Airlines asking me if I was still planning on coming to Vermont. And I said, well, I am. And they said, well, Congressman, as soon as you get here, we're ready to go. I was the only person on the plane. And now American Airlines doesn't fly direct. There used to be 3 flights a day to and from DC, none. Now they have none. So it's just a whole different world, and we've gotten used to wearing our mask. We've gotten used to, you know, actually, I can't say I've gotten used to. I've gotten used to the social distancing. I mean, we're all doing it, and it's second nature. We know we need to. And because Vermonters have been so good about that, our infection rate is much lower than other parts of the country. But I know people getting tired. I know we are, you know, the interesting discussion we had just about the important rituals of daily life that include celebrations like weddings, or sad occasions like funerals, where we can't come together and be together and share the good or the bad news. It's really, really tough. And I think what you and all of us can try to do is give solidarity to folks to help us get through it, because we really are in a different place than a year ago. We've got the vaccine, and the vaccine works. It works. And what I worry about a lot is that people are going to be tired and let their guard down before we have enough people vaccinated for that herd immunity. So it's a time when you're tempted to let, I just know this, to let my guard down, but it's a time when we can't. It'd be so awful if we let our guard down as people are starting to be vaccinated. So thank you for all that you do. And I look forward to our conversation. Go ahead, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Usually we just open up the floor for questions. So I'll do that now. Does anyone have any questions for the congressman? Feel free to just unmute yourself and ask away. Wow, really? Nothing? Peter.
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you, Congressman, because as I've said in this group before, it is amazing to live in a state where we have access, where your team members come and show up on a call. I know that you guys are doing so many calls. I know in our little community, the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance has shifted and pivoted, and there was resources for us to do that. We're running $1 million budget now where where we didn't before, and all putting put all those resources are getting put to use locally. So I'm especially pleased to hear that there's going to be that chunk of funds that can be allocated locally, because I think we are smart at the local level and people are putting in the effort to be as creative as possible. BDCC, all these organizations coming together. I really think that we've, created some ecologies of organizations that never would have sat together or trusted each other by working.
I think that's right, Peter.
So I really just thank you.
Yeah. No, and that the key, in a lot of ways, thank you, Peter, for that. But in a lot of ways, my job and Bernie's and Patrick's is the easier of the jobs. I mean, it's kind of a madhouse down there, when we dealt with Trump and we got attacked on January 6th and all that totally insane stuff that's been going on. But our job is very simple. It's to get the resources back to Vermont. Okay, that's the job. And then the hard work begins. If you have resources, the actual challenge of making decisions and executing and making it work, following through, all that day-to-day work that requires diligence, care, persistence, that's on you. So our mission is clear, the delegation, get the resources, and your job is ongoing. And I salute you for that, because that is really hard work, including all the negotiation you have to do among the various partners and all the discussion you have to be about, even if it's a significant amount of money. The needs are so great that you have to make hard-headed decisions about allocations and strategic decisions about what's best for the long term. So I salute you all for the work that you're doing.
Thank you. Ethan, I saw you had yourself unmuted. I don't know if you had a question, and then Jen, and then Brett.
Yeah, just real quick, an easy one. I noticed in our area that just COVID fatigue seems to be the biggest challenge right now. I really feel like that's growing. We know that the vaccine's coming through and everything. Were there just other talking points, other points that we can be making to our businesses to just continue to convey that sense of optimism and you're doing great and keep going?
Well, that's on a daily basis. We're all getting, the truth is, it's not about talking points. It's about an acceptance of the reality that until we're vaccinated, we're not safe. Okay, that's hard, especially if you're running a bit. There's two things. If you're running a business, it's such pressure because you want those doors to be open. You want the customers to come in. And it's really not a talking point. It's just a reminder that, hey, we got to get vaccinated. Hang in, because you don't want to have this huge setback because you jumped the gun. So I think it's just mutual reinforcement. And the more businesses that are sucking it up, actually, I hate to say that, but understanding that we've got to be careful until we don't have to be careful. And the more businesses that are doing it, it's just like in your family, the more family members that are reinforcing the need to be careful, the better off we'll be. And I think it's going to get harder even as in a way, the weather the days are getting a little longer. And as the weather gets better, want to get out. And that's good and bad. For me, getting out is great. I get out in the winter a lot too. Yeah, and it really makes a difference. But it also makes you want to have your friends over and do the things that we still have to be careful about. So I don't have any quote talking point other than the obvious. We got to do what we got to do to be safe, and we got to keep doing it until we don't have to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jen, then Gretchen, then Sue.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Congressman. Just really quickly, I want to just use the word flexibility in describing part of the proposed package. And I just want to underscore how helpful that has been. It has allowed some incredibly creative things to happen, like Everyone Eats, that is just a mind-blowing program. And Restart Vermont, which we helped administer, just it kind of left the decisions to the businesses and the nonprofits as to what they needed. And so leaving that latitude in there has led to some really great stuff that we'd all love to be doing more of. And then that's my thank you, and please keep that flexibility out there and trust people and organizations to make good creative decisions. And then my concern just comes on the back end, the compliance part. I've heard stories about how after Irene, audits and the compliance stuff really bit people who got relief hard. And I'm there's some things I'm worried about sort of, lack of clarity about some of the HUD funds that have put on the ground and which parts constitute taxable relief and which don't constitute. And so I just have concerns about that, because the devil's always in the details. So just put it out there. Don't have any suggestions, but.
Well, no, but you're right, because, when we rolled out the PPP, there weren't guidelines. Congress appropriates this a significant amount of money and has some clarity about intentions to save jobs, but then various agencies, Treasury, SBA, have to write regulations. And the regulations oftentimes are in conflict with what the intention of Congress was, B, in conflict with other regulations they're writing, C, indecipherable, and it creates a frustration and uncertainty because you want to just get rolling. And in the feedback that we've gotten from the businesses and regional commissions has helped us then advocate with Treasury, with SBA, to make clearer guidance. So there'll be issues that come up constantly, but the guiding rule for me is that as long as the money is being used for the stated purpose, that's saving jobs and businesses, and it's transparent what's being done, then I think the benefit of the doubt should go to the person or the business that received the funds. And I think that's a broadly shared view among my colleagues, Republican and Democrat. But I appreciate the concern you've expressed, and our office will work with you to make certain that we're fair to folks who, in good faith, utilize the programs that were established by Congress.
Great, thank you. Gretchen?
I echo Congressman Welch. Thank you so much for all you do. I don't think that I would be getting on a plane weekly, and especially what happened to you on January 6th. So thank you very much. My question is around the minimum wage bill.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit about, or tell us a little bit about what is in that bill around the minimum wage?
Well, it would be a 5-year phase-in to get the national minimum wage up to $15. Okay, and I don't have all the details about the phase-in, but as you know, the debate on it among good faith folks debating is not so much whether 15 is a reasonable minimum wage. I mean, that's $30,000 a year. It's not like you're going to be able to pay a lot of the bills that a family has, but it's about the reality that the wage rates in various parts of the country are really quite a bit different. And how do you have a minimum wage increase that's done in a way that is beneficial to the workers and not too punitive to really small businesses? So that I don't have the details on how the implementation occurs over those 5 years, but Rebecca, we can get that to you for your consideration.
Great. Sue?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Congressman. Thank you for being here. I'm with the Agency of Human Services. I haven't been to many of these meetings. I'm a field director for the Brattleboro and Springfield district, so happy to be here. And I'm on the statewide task force and the local group. for Vermont Everyone Eats. So as thanks, Jen, for that shout out. It's been an amazing program, and DBA has done a beautiful job as the local hub. And it's been a great example of the two sides of the shop, as I say, the sort of the business, economic development side and the individual human service sides really coming together and doing something really creative and substantive around hunger. And the beauty of it is it's been open to anyone who has been impacted by COVID, as really we all have. So the threshold or who could sort of avail themselves of the program is really broad, and that's been a beautiful thing. And there's also been this desire to connect folks that are part of that program to sustainable long-term supports like 3 squares, unemployment, other things. So I guess part of my wish is that some of those federal programs, because there's wariness around that, and we've struggled with how to help people who are new to needing services connect to those services. So something that is a concern for me, particularly is folks on unemployment, my desire for them to hear about all the things they are now eligible for because of their income threshold that maybe they were not aware that they were eligible for, and more of an opt-in sort of process where there's automatic eligibility for more things, so that the wariness or the stigma around public benefits maybe could be lessened. And I think Everyone Eats is an example of that in some way. But again, we struggle with saying, hey, we've got this kind of captive audience of folks who are food insecure on some level, and wouldn't it be great if they all applied for 3 squares, because they're all probably eligible, or most of them are eligible. And there's been some great work with USDA and waivers and expanding eligibility for school meals and all kinds of great stuff around food security. So that's beautiful. And there's a real desire for things like that to continue or to be replicated in other ways, so that there's this awareness of basic needs and the real
Right.
need connected to basic needs supports, especially again that are unaware or wary of those processes. So just a plug for, I know you do wonderful work, and we're all trying to make those connections in the ways that we can, and with the resources that we have, and all of the folks on this call have done that. I just want to kind of put a plug for continuing to think about ways to bridge that gap, I'll say, between those who need supports and how to access them, and making that as available and accessible and easy, frankly, for them as possible.
No, I think that's really, really insightful on your part. I mean, if a person is qualified for the Medicaid, or they're qualified for food assistance, shouldn't there just be one application that triggers eligibility for whatever other services are available? And I know Vermont's been leading on that effort, but making it simple, I think is really, really important. And I really appreciate all you're doing. The food insecurity is brutal. I mean, what you see that a lot of Vermonters don't see is how much pain is out there. So there's a lot of Vermonters who are doing okay. They're able to pay their bills, haven't lost their jobs. They're dealing with anxiety about health in their family, but they're not economically insecure, and they're not food insecure. And then that reality that so many Vermonters, in fact, they're really, really every day trying to figure out how to get the meals. That takes a wicked toll on folks, as you know. And I want to make it, as you do, as simple for folks who are needing it to get it. So thank you for your good work.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Peter, you put a question.
I was just going to make the comment. My daughter, who's 13, has been volunteering for Everyone Eats. And, the last couple of weeks have been difficult because we've sort of had this stopgap. And I just saw the announcement today that we're going to be able to deliver 1,000 more meals. And, the poor thing, what she was experiencing is, they would run through what was available on site in an hour. And, many people were coming in and being turned away. And she was, giving her granola bar to somebody saying, I'm so sorry, we're out. And, it's a wonderful learning experience for her to feel that compassion, but also to
see that's great.
Yeah, real need that's in the community. I love the way we have said this is for everyone. If you just can't cook that extra meal this week because you're dealing with all these other things, right. I think in the spirit of it, but it's been challenging over the last 4 weeks. So I'm glad that there's been a little more money set aside. And again, not every program is important, and this particular one, I think,
Yeah.
is a place where people come together. They go, and the volunteers have, just been so, we have 50 or 60 volunteers who are doing it every single week. So again, it's just a reminder that it's still here with us, this food insecurity.
Yeah, well, thank you. But good for your daughter.
Great. Any other questions?
I have one slightly selfish question, I'll admit, as the scheduler of these meetings. We wanted to know about the timeline of this relief, both from the folks dealing with it and our participants to these meetings. Is the next meeting, which would be in 2 weeks, a good one to take off for folks to get a breather? Or is that going to be when aid's really touching down on the ground?
No, I think that would probably be okay to take a breather. The president's goal is to try to have this passed, I think, by I think it's March 19 when the unemployment benefits would expire, and those folks without that aid literally won't be able to buy their groceries. But I don't know if Chris or Rebecca have anything on that. But the plan is act on it in the House this week. Plan is act on it in the Senate next week. Our plans are oftentimes worth the paper they're printed on. Okay, so who knows what will happen? And it really is it's a sharply divided House and a sharply divided Senate. But what the president is determined to do, I think it's March 19 is when we have to. That's when I think the unemployment benefits expired. So that's been sort of his drop dead date. So I would think you'd be okay taking 2 weeks off, or taking in 2 weeks, you'd probably be okay.
Great, thanks.
You going skiing? I mean, I'm suspicious of a hidden motive here.
Nope, just trying to give everyone a little break,
Awesome. Any other questions for the Congressman? And Congressman, I don't know what your time looks like, if there's a certain point you have to jump off. Just want
I got a little more time. If there's any more questions, then get going.
I'm also happy to stay on the line in case some more questions come up later.
Wonderful, thanks. Jen?
Yeah, I mean, I think Peter had put in there wanting to hear a little more about the funds coming to municipalities. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, I saw there was a spreadsheet. I'm just thinking, Congressman, in terms of the thinking, obviously state and local aid is important, but I don't think there's been significant funds going directly to towns, right? And
right, and there has not in the past, and the towns need it, obviously, because of all the expense. Some towns need it. Sometimes, it really is quite variable. So a lot of the flexibility would allow the towns to partner with local nonprofits. Okay, so or local food shelves. So there's going to be flexibility where the town can actually take advantage of local infrastructures to meet local needs. So that again is why I think it's so important what you're doing, because you'll be very much at the table when it comes to how do we best use these funds. Most states, they have county governments. We don't have much of that in New England. So there's going to be just a practical issue of allocating the money down to the municipal level because it won't follow what is the direct check to the municipality, but that's got to be worked out administratively. But bottom line, the gross amount that we're talking about in the House is over 300 million for local communities. And we're also talking about a good deal of flexibility, including that the local community could partner with local organizations. So I'm quite excited about that, because that puts our local talent to work with some resources to make a difference. Chris, do you have anything you want to add on the Senator Leahy end?
Congressman, I'm not sure how I improve upon what you said. You that was fantastic. I think just echoing what the one piece, I guess, is to add on the timeline. We do have just such a narrow control in the Senate that things may change a little bit from the package that the congressman laid out, with some pieces falling away or getting narrowed. But yeah, we're trying to get this done by mid-March and make sure that the help is there for Vermonters. So great job, Peter.
Thanks, Chris. And I'm sending my screenshot of you down to Senator Leahy right now.
I have some archival shots with much more beard
Yes.
on.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. It's
I'm
been a
kidding,
running
Chris.
joke.
I'm going to tell him you're doing a great job.
Max.
Sarah, thank you, Congressman, and all the delegation for your support for USDA rural development. And, I think it's really important to have the strategy that the COVID response money that's coming is almost like cash, right? It's quicker, it's faster. It's going to be administered through some paths that are much faster than a federal agency. But let's not forget about our intermediate and our long-term opportunities. Rural development is here for the long haul. And if there are projects out there that are brewing or even thought about, please talk to us, because they do take a while to develop. But we're going to be here for the long term, thanks to the delegation. And we want to be sort of proactive in our approach. So if there's things out there we can talk about early on, please give me a call.
Yeah, I will. But thank you.
Thank
You guys are playing a huge role, and I appreciate it. Well, listen, I want to say thank you to everybody. I really appreciate the work that you're doing, and I really enjoy being a part of the call. And Rebecca and I are available, anytime. This is a partnership, and anything we can do to be helpful to you, we want to do that.
Thank you so much, Congressman. We really appreciate your time.
All right. See you guys later.
Take care.
Bye.
Great. Rebecca or Chris, I don't know if there's anything else to add, or Rebecca, if you maybe want to touch on the spreadsheet at all. I don't know if that
Yeah,
Any
if folks want
comments?
to open up the spreadsheet, there's a Vermont tab that I added. I just took the information from the 3 other tabs, and you will see that if this bill passes, there will be a lot of money going directly to municipalities. And I think as the congressman said, for the bigger municipalities, there won't be problem getting the money on the ground, but for the smaller municipalities that don't already provide social services or housing, they'll have the flexibility, and they'll probably need to partner with nonprofits to get the money spent. And just for people to be thinking about that ahead of time, I think would be helpful.
Representative Kornheiser.
One piece of sort of the idea of municipalities that I was newer to me and I thought was interesting, especially in the context of the federal funds coming, is that because we don't have county government, as the congressman said, and because we have a lot of very small towns, the definition of municipality in Vermont includes school districts, it includes waste districts, it includes communication union districts. Those are all legally municipalities. And so when we have funds for municipalities, it often gets a little confusing for us to figure out the best way to move that money and implement that money. We had money in the first round of relief for municipal lending facilities, but the state was really the only municipality in a position to even attempt to engage with that funding. And so it's just an interesting sort of piece of Vermont context that I think makes moving funds to our towns really difficult. And I'm also looking forward to increased funds directly to states, because even though we received a lot of money that we could move through and out for a lot of programs that are really important for Vermonters, there was very little money in the first round for us to actually be able to use in the functioning of state or to replace lost revenue. And so that's going to be a really nice part of this too, in a good way we can support towns and the efforts in towns on the ground.
Yeah, those are all great points. This money will be more flexible than the CARES Act money in terms of allowing the state to use the money to backfill revenue losses. It gives the money to municipalities that are I don't have the language right in front of me, and maybe Chris remembers it, but municipalities and entities with that are general governments, general form of government. So it does not give the money directly to schools. I think there's some other parts of the bill that do give money directly to the schools, but this portion would only go to the towns and villages. And this particular spreadsheet was developed in Washington, D.C., where I'm not sure the person doing it understood what the difference was between towns and villages. And so there's some overlap. So it's definitely not 100% accurate. So really just use it as sort of ballpark. What's the amount of money that would likely come to my municipality? There will also be the question, so the county government, you'll see at the top, there's money that goes directly to counties. In Vermont, our counties are not considered general government. So that money will be taken care of in a paragraph that currently has the money being apportioned to towns by population. So it'll go to the state government, which will be mandated to give it to the towns by population, at least as it's currently written. That might change, but so you'd basically be looking at doubling the line of money that's in the spreadsheet. But Chris, do you want to, do you have any updates on that?
No, just to note that this is one of the places where the resource may change a little bit. You know, that there have been multiple different formulas, and depending on which state you represent and how large they are, you have a different perspective on how this should go. It's been Sarah Leahy's perspective that the minimum that Vermont should receive should be closer to what happened as part of the CARES Act. But we'll see where that shakes out. Certainly $1 billion in funding, nearly $1 billion coming to the state for the state and for local governments is nothing to sneeze at. So yeah, I think Rebecca did a great job in terms of laying out kind of the big picture.
Great. Are there any other updates, Chris or Rebecca? Otherwise, I'd hand it over to Emily.
I just think the other thing that we're trying to reinforce is that there are a lot of resources out there, and much like Ethan mentioned, folks are kind of getting COVID fatigue and how we go about our day-to-day lives. I think from a lot of folks that need help, there's fatigue about the resources that are out there, and sitting through additional webinars to understand the employee retention tax credit, or a program that they what the second round of FCRA does for providing paid leave for folks is not not necessarily what folks want to be focusing on right now, right? And just that there are these existing resources that are still out there. SBA announced today that they're changing their rules for the next couple of weeks to prioritize processing loans for truly small businesses, those 20 and under, sole proprietorships, women and minority-owned businesses, which is a positive thing. But there's still help out there, and even though Congress is looking at adding on these new tools that are focused on different systems and different layers of society that need help, there's a lot of money still going out the door. So we've been trying to reinforce that, and to the degree that folks need pointed towards how to navigate those systems, that there are some good cheat sheets out there.
Great, thank you, Chris. Emily, take it away.
I wanted to start by saying thank you to Senator Leahy for the formula that we've been using so far. I think it's going very well, and I don't think we can appreciate that enough. It's quite a gift, the small state minimum, and how it served us through this time. Also want to sort of continue to repeat the call for flexibility with funds. I think both just because we like to do what we want to do and we don't want other people to tell us how to do it. I think that's true of everyone, particularly true of Vermonters, but also the COVID fatigue related to finding resources is so real. A lot of what Sue said about people who are navigating resources for the first time, or maybe for the first time in a long time. And when each new round of funding has different restrictions, we can't just put more money into the pot. We have to reinvent the wheel, and then we have to engage with a whole new constituency around their services. And that is really confusing for Vermonters, and I think erodes trust in government and trust in state services. And it's just harder for all of us. So just really, flexibility is great because of control, but it's also, I think, really great for folks on the ground who are trying to navigate all of this nonsense and all this difficulty right now. I don't know if people saw, there was a great article in the New York Times. It was a profile of a single mother somewhere in the middle of the country, I don't remember where, and her experience of navigating these incredible boosts and benefits and then the drop in benefits and how it's affected her life. It's a really incredible piece that if I could find, I'll send to Sarah to send around, but it really, I think, points to the struggle that we're all going through. And I know that political gridlock is no one here's fault, but just the flexibility really helps us mitigate that gridlock. So things happening in Vermont, budget adjustment is sort of almost finished and I think on its way to the governor. And there are little pieces in that will have impact, but more importantly, usually we have sort of our Budget Adjustment Act as our big money bill, and then we have the big budget. And this year in between, we're going to have a specific COVID relief funding bill that I think is called the Working Vermonters Bill or something like that. I don't quite remember the talking point of it, excuse me. But what that's going to be is another round of funding for Vermont businesses who the language is not finalized at all. So it is likely to change a little bit when it goes over to the Senate. But it's going to be first for businesses who have not been able to access any other resources thus far. And then will be expanded again from there based on loss and all of the sort of usual categories. And that's going to be through ACCD. And then there's going to be other funding in there related to housing dollars and direct support to families who are on Reach Up, ideally. And so that's for, you know, people and businesses, and should be moving much faster than our budget might get signed. So hoping to get that out the door in the next couple weeks. And then the round of funding that came from the federal government in mid-December, that was the renewal of the unemployment. The big buckets of money related to that, specifically related to housing the most. We've just been sort of been able to work through what implementation of that is going to look like. And so that mostly went to the Vermont State Housing Authority, and that is for rental assistance for folks. And landlords can apply for that as well as tenants. And I think the previous program that we had that was similar to this, people needed to apply together, and we're continuing to recognize that that's not always possible. And so we're building in systems this time around so that either party can apply, and we can sort of find a way to work that out and work that through. And that money would go directly to landlords, so it would not be considered income for the person who is staying in their home because of it, but would be considered income for the landlord. And if you're talking to anyone who's concerned about the continued stay on evictions, I hope that helps settle their spirits about it. I think last time I was here, I talked about some changes in corporate taxes. Is that true? And this is the same audience I said that to 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, so I'm not going to say all that again. But if anyone's interested in changes to corporate tax policy related to sales factor, or some changes to how we're taxing manufacturing inputs, I am happy to talk about that. And I think that's it for updates from me. Just sort of want to name that we continue to be really excited about what state revenues look like. I think we were all fairly terrified 6 months ago, and the significant direct payments to individuals from the federal government and all of the money that's floating around for business relief has really led to some great spending. by Vermonters, especially consumer spending. Even when you're shopping from home, we are able to tax that. And so state revenues, especially in the Ed Fund and the general fund, look much better than they did 6 months ago. And so we are really feeling like we can do the best we can to continue state services and continue benefits to go where they need them, where we need them.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Peter, and I just want to be mindful of the time. It is 12:53, so.
Yeah, just quickly, Emily,
Yep.
because this municipal stuff, because it's so new, has got my mind twirling. And I know in Brattleboro, there was the same fear, right? That people would be late on their property taxes, and there'd be huge budget holes. That, at least so far, hasn't tended to be the case. Is there good data across the state about how municipalities are doing? You know, I know rooms and meals is down a lot in many places, but there hasn't been this huge shortfall. Just wondering whether there's any data about that, or how that impacts how municipalities should think about allocating these funds if and when they get to us.
So I'm not sure how municipalities are doing that have the 1% option. I haven't asked for data on that yet. And I imagine that Stowe's is down, for instance, but I really don't know. What I do know is that tax sales from town to town are incredibly inconsistent. And I've asked for a lot more data from the League of Cities and Towns about the story there. Tax sales usually take a couple years to completely go through. So it might not be, while it's not a COVID cause, it certainly has a significant impact on public safety when we have folks who are being evicted during because of a tax sale during a pandemic. And I'm not sure how much of that is because of a desire for town revenues and how much of that is, there's a really incredible inconsistency around how those processes are even managed from town to town. It's really remarkable to me. So that we know, but it doesn't look like we put in place an option for towns to borrow if they were struggling with their burden of taxes to the state. And no one took the treasurer up on that, not a single town. And so feel like towns seem to be doing fine with regards to that. Certainly a higher need. I think towns are seeing a higher need for services, but don't seem to be struggling with regards to revenue yet.
One thing I will
also, sorry, one more thing, Alex. I said that there was a significant amount of money for tenants. The first round of funding we had was both for renters and for homeowners, and we're about to see some money that's going to be available to homeowners for mortgage support.
Great, thanks. One thing I was going to add was with regards to organizations that, you know, rely on options tax, like local sales tax and options tax. You know, for better or for worse, we have our esteemed colleagues in the Deerfield Valley who, you know, we're open for business, you know, that part of recovery, I think, unfortunately, we've had to do before post-Irene. And so I think, you know, when we're thinking about, well, folks are housed, they're you know, fed, and we're doing all right, except for meals and room taxes in your designated downtown, which is different than buying online. I think that there's no such thing as too soon in anticipating what kind of messaging will be needed long-term. When that'll happen, who knows? But I think that's something that, you know, opening things back up takes actually a little bit longer than we always hope, and getting those revenues back up could be something we could focus an entire, you know, webinar on. So you know, just knowing how you folks at the DBA rely on some of the funding for marketing, and you know, that progress happened at a not very great time for our downtowns. Looking forward to that, I think, is something we can, you know, we can work on.
Great, thank you.
Just quickly, the Deerfield Valley Resiliency team is making calls to businesses around the valley to see what their greatest challenges right now, and information out, and we can share that information with you all. And also, you know, just on that 1% piece, it takes so long for that to be calculated at the state level and for them to take their 30%. That by the time that it gets here, it's really kind of like old information. And it would be it's done quarterly, you know, it's done by the quarter, and I understand why. But it's just like, it's another, you know, 3 to 4 months before we actually really get that funding, number one, and get the information. So just an FYI to everyone.
Thanks, Gretchen. Go ahead.
And I mean, the 1% tax is a Band-Aid on a significant problem that our municipalities have with funding. And so it's a Band-Aid that's working better in some towns than others, but it is not a solution to the problem of tax revenue for our communities. And I think that I personally would rather than continuing to Band-Aid the Band-Aid, I would like to look for another solution for how our smaller communities get money.
Great. Any last comments or thoughts? It is 12:59. All right, under the wire. Well, thank you everyone for coming. Alex will send out an email about when the next one is. Hopefully, you know, I think we get a break, right, Alex? Great.
Yeah.
All right, well, it's snowing here, so happy Monday.
Chris, go and get that bill passed in the Senate, please.
Have a great one, everyone.
Bye.